Welcome to Revive Ministries Podcast. This month we are
That was
continuing up.
deep. That was deep.
No problems. Um, I have a new guest. Her name is Brooklyn. Is that correct? This is Brooklyn,
Yeah,
like the borough.
yeah.
I usually run with with a monologue, but I do appreciate the video. I really take a lot of time in the beginning just to kind of get the
It
mood.
was so beautiful. I had to take a second. It was beautiful.
So this month, like I said, we're continuing the
PTSD.
the whole PTSD and how we process our pain. There's this one quote I was gonna it was no escapes no one escapes pain, fear, and suffering. Yet from pain can come wisdom, from fear
Have
can
you
come
already
courage.
read my book?
From surviving can come strength if you have the virtue of resilience. Thank you. Thank you. I always thank all my guests who are new. This is Brooklyn, like I said, Brooklyn Bowdler. Is that how you say it?
That's correct. You said it
Thanks.
correctly. I
Thank you.
used to say B as in boy, O-W, D as in dog, L-E-R. So you said it so well.
I've been practicing because I try to bring in
No
other words from
way.
other countries, and I feel I do a average C job on it. But I want to share those in the United States. If you are in crisis, please reach out to your resources, whatever they may be. It's one 800
For me,
273
RAINN,
8255.
RAINN, for sexual abuse and domestic violence.
Yeah, we'll put that in there. Let me just 1 second.
I work for child advocacy, domestic violence, and sexual violence. So
Yes, and wherever you are around the world, I encourage you to find what resources are available. Domestic violence.
or
Uh,
me, I'm a psychologist. Email me.
Thank you so much. And I just want to say, think people say better than I do. Brooklyn, I always say this. I don't say it because I'm self-deprecating humor. It's just because I know there's a lot of words out there. We use words differently, and sometimes people just hit it on the nail. They just hit it right.
Yeah,
So Adam Braun says it this way. He says, "True self-discovery
I like
begins where your comfort zone ends." So, what comes to mind when you hear this quote, Brooklyn?
letting go,
Letting go.
and
Yeah.
and um, and that hurts. Sometimes we want to hold on to the pain, whether it's selfishness or it's all we know. When we finally let go, it's freedom, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Sometimes we're holding on to something so tightly because we feel like we're
It's all
without
we
it.
know.
Yeah, it's all we know. We don't give ourselves grace to kind of be like,
Credit, grace, we thought
uh,
we were worthless. Yeah, I hope I speak for many, but I thought I was worthless. I didn't think I was good enough. All those things, right? So I held on to it. And when I let go, yeah, I felt grace. I felt I could breathe.
yes. Well, with all my new guests, I always like those listening to get to know you a little bit better. So, if you mind, would you mind sharing a little bit of your story and why you feel we need to remember PTSD when it comes this month? It's only been since 1980 that it's actually been
Right?
considered as more than just, we'll say, human weakness. So, why do you think? Well, yeah, go ahead, Brooklyn. Sure.
Well, first of all, I overcome severe sexual trauma. Severe meaning it happened to me once, but it doesn't matter how many times. I was raped when I was almost 11. And I remember going through treatment centers and people comparing, oh, it happened to me this many, this many. Trauma is trauma.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. Losing somebody. My daughter had cancer. She almost died. She's been fighting for 5 years.
Yeah.
Finally, in the last year, we know she's going to survive.
Yeah.
And that's when I realized I had to write this book, because the anger, the frustration, the acting out at school, the same things were happening that happened to me after my trauma. So I realized that, and then I'd also already become a psychologist. And so I was like, wow, trauma is so real, it's so relevant, and so many are going through it. And also, a big thing I have to say is I'm so sick and tired of people thinking it's this particular, it's only in these certain places. It's this demographic.
Yeah.
It's not true. I was in
No.
a big, beautiful glass house,
Mhm.
and it happened to me. So
Yeah.
I think it's really important to speak on that.
I always I never down like, a lot of times we look at people and we're like, well, you start labeling, we're like, oh, that person's
Yes, I
that.
hate labels.
And for us, like it's more than that. I'm Robert, you're Brooklyn. Like we're
Right.
like a lot of times we lose that in the scuffle of trying to get through all of this.
Absolutely.
Value is
I
a lot
love
of
that you
times
said
not
that.
value. Go
Because
ahead.
validating is we need to validate individually. I love that you said that. That's
Yeah.
just like your beginning, that kind of hit me hard. Yes, validation is, we all need to be validated and
Yeah.
be loved for who we are individually. We all have a purpose, and whether we've been through trauma or not, there's no comparison. We've all had pain.
Yeah.
So there's no reason to compare it, right? No
Yeah.
reason to do that.
And when you allow yourself the space to, when we coined the term a safe place a lot, but a lot of times it starts with you. It starts with how you value, like it says on the screen, value is a lot of times not valued. Whether it's my time, a lot of times, sometimes I work in the mental health field too, and like you're doing documenting, and I'm like, oh my gosh, someone else I have to talk to. But one time I timed myself. I'm like, this feels like 30 minutes, only 5
But
minutes.
it's only
five.
the stories are so different, and
Yeah.
it's like so amazing, right? It's so amazing, right? Like
Yeah.
helping people and then realizing like, wow, like, trauma goes so deep, so far, and so different. Domestic violence. I have women who've lost children. I have a lot of domestic violence. I have to say, a lot of sexual trauma. Women who've lost children, divorce. I mean, it goes on, and not losing a parent. It goes on, right? Trauma's trauma, and I think it's not fair to label it, as you said.
Yeah.
And I think it's not fair to compare it, because pain is pain. And as a psychologist, I know it's the same receptors. Fight or flight, right?
Yeah.
Fight or flight. So why are we comparing? If it hurt, it hurt.
Yeah, I feel like sometimes not to justify it, because I don't find anything any benefit of comparing. There's always this kind of unrealistic obviously also this urgency. One thing we always complain about is we don't have enough time. When we have this, when we're kind of stuck in it.
That's a good way to put it.
Yeah. So one person said this way with PTSD, I thought was interesting. People are like, well, what do you compare with? Well, when you're out in the woods and you see a bear, you respond, you fight. You either fight or flight.
Fight or flight.
Yeah. But when you're, what if you felt the same way when you're at your, I don't know, daughter's birthday at 2 years old, or you're just walking down the street, and you feel like you're still responding like you're out in the woods in danger. So it is.
But that's natural if you have not walked through your trauma.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. So that's why
looking behind your shoulder, right?
Yes, and that is why it's so important that this topic, this awareness, this remembrance of PTSD is put to note. And I want to ask you, putting it back to you, Brooklyn, how have you been able to process pain in the past, and what has worked and what has not?
Well, what has not worked is I'm almost 7 years clean from heroin. That didn't work. It's not funny, but it didn't work. I tried a lot of things. I wasn't under the other side of promiscuity. However, my first husband was 17 years older. And so my first 2 children will not be in the book. They're not comfortable being a statistic.
Yeah.
But they're great kids. We're very blessed. But my first husband was quite a bit older, and I think that a lot to do with I went from trauma to trauma, right?
Yeah.
And he understands that, and he's very supportive. He's also very famous, so I have to be careful. And then one of the fathers of my children is Danny Boy from House of Pain. He was also 16 years old, or however, at that point, I was 25. So it's okay. He's a great dad. And then I was married to an NBA player. Now, the reason why these people are in my life is my dad is a famous producer. All my life. He started the Rock Walk on Sunset. He started Guitar Center's co-founder. So I was around it. It wasn't like, oh, I just was some groupie, some weirdo, like, but look at me. That's not how it happened. I just was kind of around and trusted. But yeah, I do have, I will say Cal Bowdler, who played for the Atlanta Hawks, has been my tried and true. Danny and the one I prefer not to mention because I was underage, they are still in my life and we are cool, and we have children, and that's what it is. And but it's part of my trauma. I was young and I didn't understand. I didn't know yet how sick I was. So I guess to answer your question, is I guess you're saying it's how you overcome it, right? Takes time.
Yes.
Takes effort. It's almost like getting off dope, right? You have to like realize that it is a sickness. You're not quite well. Like it's not quite normal to be married to somebody almost 18 years old. It's not quite normal. However, you have a support system or you don't. You can be your own support system. And I believe in the Lord. I know God got through so much. So you can be your own support system. And God, what a badass you are if you are. If you get through it on your own, oh my God, I commend I have 6 men. Through the epidemic, my church sent me patients. Can you imagine being an NBA player's wife? I could not imagine being a junior or senior in high school and not being able to be scouted, right? So I had to work with them, and my husband was really helpful with them, and he was able to get them all tryouts with the right people. We got 3 signed, but that was just out of luck. I was just so I came home like in such pain. I was like, could you imagine if you couldn't do your dream, right? So the pandemic changed a lot of things, and according to what your question was, it changed. My daughter had cancer during the pandemic. One of my daughters. My other daughter had made varsity basketball, and she couldn't play, and she became, she gets upset, but she became very depressed, and we were fearful of worse, is all I'm gonna say. So we had to get her help. It really kind of like, one of my best friends is Jason Momoa. He actually saved my life. I was being strangled. He rented the apartment below my house in 2004. And, I walked in my house on the phone with Cal, and my house was being robbed. And Cal said, I'm calling Jason. Imagine Jason Momoa, always been a big dude. And he ripped this guy off me, and the guy went to prison. We never heard from him again. But the fact of that is that one, sometimes we need help, and we need to realize we can't do everything alone. However, at the same time, you are strong enough to overcome. And my daughter needed a break. She had just made varsity basketball. My other daughter, we just found out she had a brain tumor. It was just a lot. And in the pandemic, it was all at once. And Jason said, divorcing Lisa, which I still think they're soulmates. I'm not letting that go yet. But Jason said the changing of the times, our family is not exempt. We're human like everyone else. And I called him, and I was like, that like made me cry. I was like, that's so true. We're all relevant. We all matter.
Yeah.
We all have something to say and something to do with our lives, whether it's marriage or family or acting or whatever it may be. You doing a podcast, by the way, I can't handle podcasts. I've tried twice. You are a badass. I just gotta say, it is hard work. It is hard work.
Well, you know, I just listening to you, I'm remembering, at least for me, it's taking time. You know, a lot of times everything's overwhelming, and you just took the time. Sometimes the best thing is to give yourself time. We don't give ourselves time for anything. To think about the changes the changes we may need to make, and sometimes we're like, well, this problem I had for 7 years, I want to, and you don't give yourself time.
I prayed. So I relate to that statement very much.
And when we give ourselves that time, when we start to like piece everything back, we know the journey of recovery is different. It changes. You start looking at perspective differently. What you value is different because you are different. And we even see in the physical realm, even in medical realm, that treatment's different for everyone. People respond to medication differently. There's no different mental health. It's just you can't see it.
With talking to someone in psychology. So yeah, absolutely.
And the mental health field is no different. It's unique to the individual. Like what works for you when it comes to supportive resources is different from someone else. You know, someone else may like to just read a book and stay home, and that helps them. Someone else may need to connect more. We all are not islands, so we do need to connect in that way.
I'm more of a recluse. I'd stay home, but I guess.
Yeah, at the same time, I could be a hermit too. I like being a hermit.
I have to push myself to go out, but when I do, I do, and I tell my clients this. I say, you know, push yourself, and I promise it's going to push you further into where you need to be.
Yeah, and you know, sometimes there's a word. You know, I said I say words wrong. It's hraith. It's in Welsh. The reason I love this, let's read this. It's a homesickness of somewhere.
Oh God, I'm so into history, so please. So I'm inviting my husband actually is William the Conqueror's greatest grandson. We do this whole like history, so it's really. I'm just a peasant from India, but okay. But I find it so interesting that you know Welsh. That's really cool.
Yeah, and like this word is untranslatable in any other language. It says a homesickness of somewhere you cannot return to. When you don't take your time,
they're very intuitive. Yeah.
Yeah. So when you don't take time to even address or understand why you do what you do, it's like I don't want to do this, but I keep doing it. You kind of have this skewed view of what your past was. Your nostalgia and grief is a lost place that you never were. And when you don't, you get stunted. But at the same time,
absolutely,
when you're able to take time and say, you know what, I'm overwhelmed. When you're, mental health, PTSD, substance use,
accept that moment and grow with it. And I tell my clients, watch TED Talks. There's meditate. There's other ways, and I'm bad at meditating, not gonna lie. But there are ways to revamp yourself, kind of re-energize yourself. Because we all get tired, right? We all get tired. We all get tired. This world is hard. It's not easy. It's hard.
And I think you hit the nail in the coffin before when you said it's really about the people. When you think about it, well, mental health. Why do we care about these things? The people we love, the people close to us. We make it so hard sometimes. Yeah, it is complicated because the individuals are complicated. That comes with the package.
Well, the beginning of your podcast, I was like crying. I was like, this is so amazing. Like it's so real. Like it's so real. And I think more than we realize of the population is struggling with PTSD because there's so many more things. You don't have to go through something like me being raped or go to war to have PTSD. You can be hit once or lose a loved one or get in a car accident. A lot of things cause PTSD. And I think many people assume they have to have it so big and so kind of almost like glamorous, right? That's Hollywood big, like blockbuster to affect you. And that's not true. We're
I,
human, right?
yeah.
So we
Uh,
need to, I always say this, we need to always be inclusive and say, what have you been through, and understand, not say, oh, I've been through this, I haven't been through that. That's not what it's about. You know what I
yeah,
mean?
yeah.
It's not what it's about.
In math, I remember when I did trig, it was like the derivative
So
of things.
bad at that.
Well, the derivative is like the simplest form. So a lot of times in my journey, a lot of times it stems from something very simple. I felt left out. That led to this. That led to that. I felt sad. That led to this. That led to that. I felt neglected. I felt this.
So did I, and I was the varsity cheerleading
Yeah,
coach.
yeah.
So
It's sometimes the most simplest
don't
emotions.
think that just
Yeah.
because you look a certain way or you're from a certain family that
No.
you don't feel alone or scared in a room full of people.
Yeah, there's a difference between a house and a home. You could be in a huge house,
Exactly. Exactly.
and it's not a home.
Absolutely. That is a perfect synopsis of exactly. You're
Brooklyn,
exactly right.
I'm shifting over to you. What has been? It's kind of a little different the way I'm wording it. Some notable elements that changed the way you looked at the pain you went through today, I guess, and where you went through to be that you where you
From
are
being
today.
honest, from being honest with others around me, and not giving a crap if my mom wanted to believe me or not, knowing that my sister, my brother, my husband, my ex-husband, and my children, they knew something had happened to me. Being believed, and no longer feeling misunderstood. That's
Yeah.
so important.
A lot of times, some groups I do, it's a lot about being heard. Sometimes,
Absolutely being heard. I talk about that all the time. Being heard. If you've watched my Instagram, it's all being heard, being heard, being heard.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
And I also find, I know it's different for everyone, that when you give yourself enough time to be insightful, when you give yourself time to be heard, and that doesn't even have to be talking, it could be creative. You could draw, whatever you do,
Yeah.
something that expresses yourself.
Johnny Depp is a good friend of mine. He loves drawing. That's how he feels. He feels heard because he feels unheard because it's opposite from most of us, right?
Yeah.
He doesn't feel heard because everybody's listening, right?
Yeah.
But who's really listening, right?
Yeah.
So during the trial, I was there for him, and he's like, yeah, I'm waving to people, I'm doing that, but who's really hearing me? Who's really seeing me as me?
Mm-hmm.
And that hit me hard too. I wrote a whole chapter about, okay, so being from, my dad was celebrity. My dad probably sold almost every guitar he owns. My dad co-founded Guitar Centers. He Grammy for Black Crows. She Talks to Angels, written about me. So I grew up in that lifestyle, but then my mother was an alcoholic, and that wasn't great. But it was so like eye-opening, ear-opening, like life-opening when he said, yeah, everybody sees me, they're waving, but do they hear me?
Yeah.
Do they hear me? So I still get that. It's so imperative to our growth, to who we become, who we are, who we believe we are, and who we know loves us, right?
Yeah. That small group sometimes. Yeah, exactly, because it's that small group, and a lot of times people may respect you, may even like you, maybe really love your work.
Respect and it's
but really it's not. It's no one really hears you, like you said. Like no one hears you. They say what they think you want to hear. They say what you think they think.
And I've been guilty of doing that, to be liked or feel like I'm being heard.
Yeah.
I've been guilty of that.
And I think all of us in some degree have. We really just want to belong in some way, fit in. Even whatever circles you're in.
Remember me.
Remember me. I want to be liked. There was one person one person, he's talking about, just marriage. He's like, you get married, and you love your wife, right? Or you love whoever. And the thing is, later on, do you ever ask yourself, do you like them? After a while, it's that you forget that there's just
Hopefully,
also.
I've been married 3 times. So, what do you like them for? I learned this. I married for less than love the first time, which we're still great friends. We have 2 children, but like should come first before.
Yeah.
I found that marrying a friend turns out to be a lot more beautiful than the lust.
Yeah, there's just so much expectations, when you have the love,
Absolutely. You hit the nail on the head. Like lust and passion is like they keep expecting.
Yeah.
But if it's your friend, they understand if you're like throwing up one day.
Exactly.
Exactly.
But, you get the ugly, but you also get it's just it's both together. You could be a person, not the person that you want them to see, and that's. I heard stories where women just wear makeup in bed and stay in there so they look good in the morning.
I've never been like that. I can't put eyeliner on for you. I did that because I did a photo shoot earlier for the book. Otherwise, I wouldn't have even put on makeup.
It's just for me. It's more just
but I
how much.
The
whole. They forget. They sometimes lose themselves, and in regards to. PTSD and how we see ourselves and how we see ourselves in it can be really detrimental if you see yourself that way. When you're stuck, you're like, well, this is just how it is, and you're not, you don't think that there is something better. And I'm gonna put all the notes of where you could get help, like the domestic violence, all that stuff in the notes for those.
If you don't mind, Rain for sure. I work with Rain.
And speaking of that, I want to shift over to you, Brooklyn, again for. Could you share with us a little about the work you do today? What are you doing for those listening? Where can they find you if they want to know more about you and stuff like that? Go ahead.
Yeah, no, you go ahead. Well, I mean, you can DM me, you can email me. I'm all about. I want to connect. I love connecting. It doesn't matter how big this book gets, as Fred Durst told me last night, he said, I think about 5,000 people, and I talked to Trent Reznor last week, and he's like, I think about 15 to 5,000 something other people are going to pick it up just to make sure they're not in it. So no matter how big the book gets, I just want people to feel heard. I want people to know it's not perfect. Just because my daddy was rich and famous and all these things, my mom was a Croatian model from a war-torn country. She was cold. She an alcoholic. She. I'm not gonna say names in my book about who raped me because I'm not trying to hurt anybody, but it was somebody close to family and someone she protected over me.
Yeah.
And I think that was the worst pain out of it all, is that she would stay here, I'll be right back, and she never came back. And next morning she said, do you want eggs? And I had to make a decision. I said, okay, am I gonna cry and whine? And I don't recommend this, but this is what I did.
Mm-hmm.
Am I going to cry and whine, or am I going to guilt trip her until she's honest? That took 20 years. I don't recommend that. I took my Brooklin Bowdler, the NBA player, took him really seeing the pain out. Like when my first 3 children turned 10, I just lost it. And he was like, something is wrong. To my mom's name's Jan. Something's wrong, Jan. Something really bad happened to her. We got it. This is not okay. And she's like, oh, she's fine. It was no big deal. And that's when I knew, 1, something had happened. And 2, it is a big deal. And being a father of 2 daughters, he was like, how is it not a big deal? The minute that I was violated, the second I said, no to the quote person taking me to the back of the house. I said, no, 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 and I kicked. I was violated at that moment. It was done. I was done.
Mm-hmm.
I was scared. I knew something was wrong. What many people need to understand too is that your attacker is not always going to threaten. They're not always going to, threaten to kill your family, threaten to hurt you, all these. So that was very confusing for me as well. I was not threatened. I wasn't like strangled or like beaten or anything like that. I was told this may hurt or, things that might be too extreme for this, but I was never threatened. And so I think many people need to, and when I speak at schools and churches, that's what I hear the most is that, it happened and they just left, and then they didn't threaten me. So was it that bad? Yeah, it is that bad. If someone violates you and no matter what age you are, if you say no, you're violated, right?
Yeah.
So, and it's not about women's rights and politically correct. Like personally, I'm friends with Matt Lauer. I'm friends with many people that have been accused of things. James Franco lived above me in my apartment on Franklin Whitley. Frankly, I feel like some are accused of things because girls don't get what they want. So I know the difference, right?
Yeah.
I do know the difference, and I don't think it's fair. I don't think it's fair that men of a certain stature or whatever are suddenly accused of things, right?
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure that they wanted to go home with James Franco. Okay.
Yeah.
So that is so different from being violated in a way that you're scared, you don't even know who you are anymore, right? I kind of lost track of the question, but
no,
I think it's so important to know the difference, right? Because in this day and age, being politically correct, right? There is a difference of you've got, and I'm sure many see the gut of like, I just don't want men to get a bad rap all the time, right?
Yeah.
I don't want women to get a bad rap. I want it to, we are equal. I want people to be able to see the difference, right?
Yeah.
And I have a lot of, like Johnny, who went through this with Amber, and I went to Arlington to see him, which my husband actually is from Virginia. He's from Richmond. So I have family up there. And I was like, it's painful to see a man go through what they didn't do, right?
Yeah.
And so that's important to me as well in this book, is to make sure, and actually, Fred Durst, a lot of people that write in my book are men. To write about the memories of the fun times we had together.
Yeah.
And I think that might surprise people, but at the same time, I am I'm not the deciding factor on who's good or bad, and it's not man or woman.
Yeah.
It's not.
Yeah.
I know both that have been hurt physically, sexually, mentally. So we need to stop labeling, as you said.
Yeah.
We need to stop doing that. It's not fair.
Yeah, and there's a word, siempre. It's not always in Spanish. Siempre, always one case or the other. It's, we a lot of times like to define things because it's easier. There's this one. I remember this one dialogue. Memorial Day.
Is it easier?
It is easy.
I find it irritating, but you're right.
No, it's easier for the. No, that's okay. It's easier for the individual to say that over time. But then what happens?
You don't mean like man or woman, because I get really irritated.
No. I'm talking about how we see the human himself.
Yeah.
How there's this one they were talking about,
it's the end of time. It goes to the end of time, like the beginning of time, technically.
And D-Day, there's one, D-Day was June 6th. We will forget about that. Yeah.
My grandfather was at Normandy. He was captain under Eisenhower. Yeah.
And the one thing they say is, to be a good soldier, you can't look at your other person as a human. You can't look at your enemy as a human. Once I see him as a human, I'm not a good soldier. I'm saying it was spoken by someone else. I thought it was
That was
interesting.
my grandfather's downfall, but he also won a gold star and 2 silver stars, Purple Heart. He didn't tell my grandmother when he died. She found them, and she was like, "What? He went to the White House, didn't tell me." He was just so humble, you know. Yeah. He was just saving. He was just helping. You know, that's what I think we should do is help others and not worry about our name. You know.
Yeah. I just, the illustration was to point out that we a lot of times dehumanize things we don't understand.
Absolutely.
And it's the only way. A lot of times we can't do it any other way. So it's easier to say this whole group is the reason why this has happened, or this whole other group.
And I hate that.
Yeah. So, and what the question was before was could you share a little bit about the work you do today? And you kind of displayed it. You were very passionate. In Greek, it's I can't even say it.
I don't. So individually, people annoy me from white, but it doesn't matter. Individually, it can piss me off. I don't care. I don't appreciate groups being labeled, as we talked about, being positioned in a place that they are backed in a corner and they feel that they have no voice. Yeah. That really gets me really emotional. Above my fireplace, my daughter painted a picture. She goes to Mercer for political science because I think Trump traumatized her. No political. We're not going to do that. That was her choice. But she was going to SCAD for art. Amazing artist, intensely amazing. And she did this art that had to do with all races. It's in a hole 3 rooms away, and it showed slavery and then the time, but it then showed a Black woman with a scarf still around her eyes, she still felt blind, she still felt unseen.
Yeah.
And I did TikTok with my friend Ira Williams, who I talk about a lot in my podcast. Ira's amazing. He's an amazing man. He's a beautiful Black man who's all about we're equal, we're the same. He doesn't believe in, anything other than that, right? We're the same. We bleed the same. We just need to come together, right?
Yeah.
And I appreciate that so much. And I always felt as a white woman, I couldn't really say that because I was kind of backed into a corner that I had to just be politically correct. But I always felt we were the same. And growing up in Germany and Croatia, younger, race wasn't necessarily an issue. I mean, most of my friends are mixed. I mean, their mom married a Black soldier, or vice versa. So I didn't understand that as much. It wasn't until I came to America that I realized how segregated we were. And surprisingly, Hollywood is so segregated. I know culturally it's different and everything's accepted, but Hollywood is very segregated. We got Mexicans here, we got this, we got gays here, we got this here, we got the rich here, we got this here. And it didn't really hit me until after BLM. I was like, man, I thought I was from one of the most diverse places, but yet it's so segregated. And, I have a lot of women who are, I don't need to say celebrity names, but you can look on my Instagram. I have a lot of women who are Black actresses who are quite famous. Gabrielle, who's married to an NBA player, so she's friends with my husband, Gabrielle Union. But it's just it's so segregated, and I don't think people realize that. I think Hollywood is just it's so, and it is. Hollywood's amazing, and a lot of things are go unnoticed. Drugs, being a teen mom to a husband who was 17 years older at 16, not normal. A lot of things go unnoticed, but when we talk about where people live, I would say Los Angeles is one of the most segregated cities I've lived in.
Mm.
That was hard as I was writing this book. That was hard to come to terms with
Yeah.
because my nanny was from Compton.
Mm.
So, and then my other nanny was from Inglewood. So I would go on Sundays and hang out, play with the kids. And then I grew up in West Hollywood, right?
Mm.
And so I didn't get it. And then when I was
Mm-hmm.
older, I was like, where is everybody? Where are the people I know?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think there's a lot of work to be done, my friend. A lot of
Yeah.
work to be done. Still
Yeah.
to this day. Still
Yes.
to this day. Can you believe
Mm.
that?
Yeah. I heard this one quote. It said, if you want to go fast, you could best do it alone. If you want to go far,
Yeah,
do it. You got to do it together. That means it doesn't mean it all happens. Like, you could go fast, you have these ideas, but a lot of times, if you want to do it as a community, you go far, you don't go fast. Like these things, you get what I'm saying? Like
yeah, I
sometimes,
do.
what I want to
But
share is what.
we have to get the community in unison, right?
Yeah, yeah, and that takes work. Of course, it takes work. The
And
one
they
thing,
can't all look the same because I'm really sick of that. We
yeah,
have to all come from everywhere
and
and look different.
that's why I love having different perspective, different people from all walks of life talking in a safe place. You answered the question without even knowing it. It's in Greek. It says you pour yourself and wholeheartedly into something and doing it so with your soul, creativity, and love. That is what you do today. That is what you do. It's right there on the screen for those watching. The National Domestic Violence Hotline. Their number is 800-799-7233. I will also add
Rain, RAINNE.
Yeah, and that will be in the notes for those listening. You'll see it right underneath the video. I want to ask you one last question before we kind of wrap up here. What drives you today to keep going? It's a lot. It's overwhelming. What keeps you going? Your children.
But when I was an addict, my children, people say they weren't enough. That's not true. I was still really very sick. Mm. But after seeing my daughter survive cancer, trauma's trauma. And I want my kids to, and my daughter going to school, political science for equality. I must have done something right.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, so, and without getting too emotional, my kids, yeah. And my daughters, they're so strong. And I want them to know they can overcome anything, whatever it takes. I mean, writing a book is not easy. And I, just signed my contract and we start printing in 2 weeks and it'll be out in August. I go on book tour September 2nd. And it's been a rough 9 months, right? But I had to do it. It's just, that God gut. It nags and nags and that kind of like probably with your podcast, it's like you got to do it. It's something that nags you. You can't even sleep. It nags you. It nags you. You're nagsy.
Yeah.
Unless you want to drink or do drugs, which I don't want to do anymore. Yeah. It's going to keep nagging. So whatever that is, whoever's listening, whatever that is, that's nagging at you, there is enough room at the table for all of us.
Yes.
Do it. I promise you. I promise you.
Yes. I love that.
So does your story.
I love that because a lot of times we just hold ourselves back. We're like, well, you know what? Don't care about what anyone else is doing. Just do you. Just go ahead. Thank you so much. I want to also say, it's always those who are listening. I just want to say that recovery is, there's stages. People go through this and it's real. So whatever someone is suffering, just be kind. Be kind to them.
Absolutely.
You don't know what they're going through. You don't know what, and a lot of times, just knowing
things. Can I tell you
what
my dad says?
What does he say?
My dad says the nicest for fake people, so be kind. Nice for fake people, be kind.
Yes.
Truth, and don't snitch.
Yeah, snitches. Yeah.
Sounds like Chicago. But the nicest for fake people. That's like, hi, have a nice day. when
Yeah.
you look someone in the eyes
Mm.
and you notice their name
Yeah.
working wherever you are,
Yeah.
be kind. Yes.
Yes. Yeah.
Sorry, it's
No,
just
no,
really
no, no.
beautiful.
I love the passion when you could talk to a person and there's
Yeah.
200 people in the room, but they feel that you're the only one you're talking
Yeah.
to. That
They
is something.
change
That's an art that
because
is
they
long.
matter. They matter.
They matter, and I would say all those listening, each one of you matter. Like, don't hold on to your title. Don't hold on to what you did. Hold on to who you are and who you're becoming. I want to
Yes.
say thank you so much,
Yes.
Brooklyn, for joining the discussion. It's
Thank you.
the discussion. This is just continuing on. It's not. We're not static people. We continue to change. It is one thing that's good, but also bad.
Absolutely. And
Bridges are.
we need to accept each other as we change.
Yes.
And it's growth. It's growth.
Yes.
And it's a good thing. And we shouldn't stay stagnant, as you said, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
We should continue to learn and grow and want. And it
Yes.
doesn't matter where you work or what you do, you have a purpose and you are made for greatness, no matter what that looks like.
And the
No matter
beautiful
what that looks like.
And the beautiful thing about, when you have that safe place, whatever that small net, accountability is not a bad word. A lot of times
No,
accountability is a bad word when you don't feel safe.
that got me thinking.
But it is not a bad word when you are feeling safe because you just want to be what? Better today. If better today looks like just getting out of the bed, then get out of
Amen.
the bed. That's it.
Well, make the bed. Make the bed.
Yes. Well,
That will help. I promise it helps.
this is Goodbye from Revive Ministries Podcast, leaving with this last quote from Neil Strauss. This is true. People go through so much pain trying to avoid pain.
Yeah.